Why are there compliments that reach straight to a woman's heart, and others, nearly identical, just as brief, only cause her to close herself off? You've likely witnessed this before. A simple date, nothing out of the ordinary. She walks out of the cafe slowly, not in a hurry, but her mind keeps circling back to one quiet line. I'm not sure why, but when you sit across from me, everything feels calmer. It wasn't crafted to impress. It wasn't polished. And yet, it stayed with her, subtle but deep. A sincere compliment, offered at the right time, stops being casual. It becomes a moment of connection, gentle, almost weightless, but it stays, not because of the words themselves, but because the speaker truly noticed something. And when you are seen, not judged, not desired as a possession, but simply seen as you are, that stays with you. If a compliment is just a reflex, something said because you feel you should, then, no matter how nice it sounds, it will slide past her heart. It won't leave anything behind. Women don't need eloquence. They don't need charm. They need presence, real, grounded presence. And being present isn't just about sitting across the table. It's about being still enough to observe, attuned enough to sense, patient enough to resist filling the silence. And when you do see something worth saying, you say it with honesty. No performance, no agenda. This isn't a video about lines that win her over. It's about 3 kinds of compliments, delicate ones, the kind that can easily miss the mark if said without care, but when said with clarity and timing, they make her remember you, not as someone trying to impress, but as someone quietly different. Because a man of strength, as the Stoics remind us, has no need to speak often. He simply sees clearly, feels deeply, and speaks only when it matters. Just enough to be remembered, never enough to take. 1. Compliment the small things others overlook. Have you ever complimented a woman genuinely, politely, only to realize later that your words didn't leave any impression at all? It's not because you said something wrong. It's because hundreds of others have said the exact same thing. A common mistake many men make isn't a lack of sincerity, it's that they compliment what's too easy to notice. A new hairstyle, a flattering dress, a hint of perfume in the air. These compliments aren't wrong, but they're like leaves, easy to see, easy to touch, and easy to fall away. Women are more perceptive than you think. They hear the compliment, they smile, nod, but inside, they may have already placed you into a familiar category. He's just like the rest, not because they're cold, but because they know very well what they've chosen to show and what they haven't revealed, yet secretly hope someone might be sensitive enough to notice. I once sat beside a woman in a cafe on a rainy afternoon. She wasn't wearing makeup, her hair tied back neatly, dressed in a soft grey sweater, no standout accessories, but something about her kept me from looking away. It was the way she listened. She didn't interrupt, she didn't pretend to understand. She was simply present, and somehow she made the person in front of her feel fully there, no effort needed. I didn't tell her she was beautiful. I didn't call her graceful or refined. I just said, almost like thinking out loud, "The way you listen without interrupting makes me feel respected." She didn't respond right away. She just looked up and held my gaze for a long time. Then she returned to the silence. But that silence felt warm, as if she had just been seen in a part of herself she wasn't even sure someone could notice. If you want to compliment a woman without ending up in the just like everyone else box, don't just look at what she's clearly trying to show. Let your attention reach what's small, the things she's not hiding, but has never put on display. An unconscious detail, a fleeting expression, a tiny habit no one notices. If you can see it, it means you're truly present. Once, I said to a woman, I'm not sure if you've been smiling more than usual, but it puts me at ease. I don't know why I said it at that moment, but what's interesting is, from that day on, every time we met, she smiled that same way, as if those words had touched something inside her and held on to it. Women don't need you to read them deeply. They just need you to see them clearly, to see without overanalyzing, to see without casting them in a role. And those small things, when you're clear-headed enough to catch them, become something big in their experience, because they say, you're here, and you're seeing. A lot of people think attraction means knowing what to say, making others laugh, shining in a crowd, but true presence, sometimes, is just about being still enough to notice a detail others overlook. A faint lipstick mark on a coffee cup, the way she turns slightly toward the light, like she's reaching for something warm she hasn't named. No one can teach you how to see that. Only deep presence makes it visible, and if you see it, and say it with sincerity, you'll become the only one who ever did. Not because you tried to stand out, but because you weren't superficial, like most of the world out there. A woman might hear dozens of compliments in a day, but one genuine line about something small no one else mentions can live inside her for a long time, and sometimes, because of a single moment like that, she'll start seeing you differently. Not because you were trying to win her over, but because you touched a part of her that's real and private, the part she rarely shows, but always hopes someone will notice. 2. Compliment the feeling she brings into your life. Some women enter your life not through a dazzling look or a striking first line, but with a presence that is calm and quiet. They don't overwhelm you, they don't create the urge to pursue, and they don't make you feel like you need to try harder to be noticed, but somehow they bring ease to your mind. As if the moment she's there, the space becomes easier to breathe in. That feeling isn't easy to name. It doesn't come from her appearance, or the way she speaks, or any outward gesture. It comes from something she never tried to create, an effortless kind of calm, not shown off, not needing to be acknowledged. And what you begin to realize is that when you're around her, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to be witty, strong, or impressive. You just have to be yourself. And that alone makes you feel enough. We often praise what we can see: her eyes, her smile, her presence. But there's something else that doesn't show in a photo, isn't shared on social media, and no one else can feel but you. That's the feeling she leaves behind. A feeling without a clear shape, but when it's there, you know it's real. And if you're quiet enough to feel it, and honest enough to say it, that compliment may reach something deep inside her. I once sat next to a woman like that. That day I was restless. My thoughts were crowded, and I didn't have the energy to keep a normal conversation going. But she didn't ask questions. She didn't try to cheer me up. She didn't fill the silence with empty words. She simply stayed gentle, quiet, present. Her being there asked for nothing, yet it was enough to help me breathe again. I was silent for almost 10 minutes. Normally, that kind of silence feels awkward, but not that time. She didn't feel the need to break it, and I didn't feel the need to explain. As I got up to leave, I said one line, not out of politeness, not to make her happy, but just to acknowledge what I had felt. I don't know why, but when you're around, my head feels less noisy. She didn't answer. She just looked at me for a long time. Her eyes weren't surprised, not confused. It felt like she had always known and was simply waiting for me to be still enough to realize it. And I understood that what I said, simple as it was, had stirred something in her, not in a romantic direction, but in a way that affirmed the quiet power of her presence. Since that day, whenever we met again, she remained the same light, calm, without needing to get closer or pull away. but I could sense something had shifted, not between us, but within her. She began to trust the value of her presence, that she didn't need to be loud, didn't need to prove anything, to make a difference just by being there. Another time, I told a woman who had passed through my life in silence, "I don't know why, but when I'm with you, I feel like I want to be a little kinder." She laughed and asked, "So how were you before that?" I smiled and replied, "Fine, just not exactly kind." We didn't analyze it further, but from that moment, I noticed the way she looked at me changed. Not because I praised her, but because I acknowledged something even she wasn't sure she had. Impact. A softness that didn't demand. A weight that didn't need to be spoken. There are compliments that don't respond to what someone shows on the outside, but reach into the part of them they never expected anyone to notice. That's when words are no longer used to impress, but to reflect something quietly personal, something only you felt, and only you were still enough to name. Women don't need you to understand every part of them. They just want to know someone is truly present and able to feel what they never intended to project, a feeling, an influence, a small moment of calm in days filled with too much noise. And if you're the one quiet enough to sense it, then be the one to say it, not to earn anything, but to affirm that something beautiful is already there. In a world that moves fast, there are women who don't stand out, but somehow make you want to slow down, soften, and live better. They don't change you through advice, they do it through being present. And when you're still enough to feel that, even the quietest words you say can stay with them for a long time. A compliment doesn't have to make her smile. It only has to make her pause, look inward for a moment, and realize there is something in her that, without effort, still reaches someone else. 3. Compliment a quality in her she hasn't seen in herself. Not every woman is fully aware of the quiet beauty she carries, especially those who live gently, who don't show off, who are used to doing what's right without ever thinking about whether they're shining while doing it. Sometimes, these women haven't even stopped to wonder if there's anything in them that deserves praise. They don't usually need validation, but if someone, just once, can see and say something they've never dared to admit to themselves, it can change how they live from then on, not because it makes them proud, but because they begin to realize there's a part of me here that's truly worth protecting. She doesn't know that she makes people feel safe. She doesn't realize that her silence helps calm a tense room. To her, it's just instinct, a way of being, but the people near her can feel it, and they feel it clearly. A calm woman doesn't need to insert herself into loud conversations. When someone is upset, she doesn't push back, nor does she rush to smooth things over. She simply stays, like a pause, unforced, not trying to understand. And somehow, her presence alone helps soften what's around her. She doesn't think there's anything special about that, because to her, she's not doing anything. But some kinds of influence don't come from effort. They come from simply existing as you are, and that's already enough to create change. There was a man who once told his wife, "If our daughter grows up to be like you, I don't think she'll ever need anyone to protect her." That sentence didn't make her smile. It made her stop, because for the first time, someone had named the quiet strength she had lived with for years, without trying to be strong, without drawing attention to it. That compliment wasn't meant to flatter her. It didn't put her in the role of an amazing woman. It simply reflected something she had never quite seen in herself, that someone had leaned on that silent strength of hers and felt safer because of it. There was a woman who once held a friend's hand during a crisis. She didn't say much. She simply sat beside her, quiet, steady, for 2 full hours. And when her friend finally calmed down, the first thing she did was pour her a warm glass of water. No theories, no advice, Just a line, "You're probably thirsty." People might forget all the comforting words spoken that day, but they'll remember that glass of water and the one who quietly offered it. Because at a time of weakness, someone chose not to speak, but to care in the simplest, most human way. And if you're the first person to see that, the first to name it, not to impress her, but to help her see that she's someone who can be trusted, someone who matters, then you're not just making a connection, you're handing her a mirror, one clear enough to reflect the part of herself she's quietly passed by for years. You don't need to call it philosophy. You don't need to frame it as a lesson. One honest sentence, said to the right person at the right time, is enough to change the way someone sees herself. Maybe you won't get a thank you. Maybe she won't say anything at all. But if the words are real, and you ask for nothing in return, you've done something deeply kind, and that kindness will remain, not just in her memory, but in the way she chooses to live afterward. Notice moments like that. Don't wait for her to do something big. Watch how she moves through life, quietly, steadily, in ways that often go unnoticed. And when you're the one who sees it first, you won't need to say much. Just speak what's true. Speak it gently. Then let the silence take care of the rest. 4. A kind of compliment that makes her want to become a better version of herself. Some compliments do more than make someone feel good. They awaken in a person a quiet desire to grow, not to please anyone, not to impress, but for something more personal. She wants to live up to the way she was just seen, to that kind gaze that made her feel like she's becoming someone trustworthy. Women aren't lacking compliments, but not every compliment leaves a mark. Some make her smile, then vanish. Others make her go quiet and wonder for days. If he sees that in me, maybe I should start believing it too. That's no longer just a compliment. It's a form of recognition, gentle, but deep enough to shift how she walks through the days ahead. Not everyone knows they're living well. Some are strong, but unaware that their steadiness is quietly reaching others. Some care deeply for those around them, but never think of their thoughtfulness as a value worth protecting. When someone lives too long in self-doubt, or a kind of humility that hides even the good within them, they often become uneasy when praised. That's why a well-timed compliment, unembellished, without flattery, can wake up something they've long considered just normal. I once heard a man say to the woman he loved, "I think you have a way of making people want to be a little better just by how you live," quietly, without asking for attention. She didn't laugh or blush. She stopped, went still, because no one had ever said that to her. For years, she'd simply tried to live kindly, not to prove anything, but because it felt right. And yet no one had told her that this quiet way of living was already reaching others. That compliment didn't make her feel proud. It made her want to continue, not to be seen, but to stay loyal to the goodness that had just been named. From that moment on, kindness was no longer just a quiet habit. It became something she knew mattered, and from that knowing, she lived with it more clearly. To compliment a woman in a way that makes her better isn't to pressure her into change. It's not saying, "You should be like this." It's saying, "I think this is already in you, and it's beautiful." A compliment like that doesn't make someone try harder to become perfect. It makes them soften and continue, because it doesn't demand anything. It simply recognizes what's already there. A friend once told me, he said to the woman he loved, "I don't know if you've noticed, but even when you smile at someone you don't like, you still hold on to your kindness. That's not easy." She looked at him for a long time, then just replied, "Really?" But something in her eyes changed. A part of her that had felt tense, that had seen herself as fake or weak, suddenly relaxed, because for once, someone didn't judge that act, but understood it. We don't always know what someone is struggling with when they choose to move gently through the world. We don't see the push and pull between wanting to let go and choosing to stay kind. But if you look closely enough, you'll notice. And if you notice, don't stay silent, because the words you speak at that moment might help her forgive herself or find just enough strength to hold on to the part of her that still believes. This kind of compliment doesn't need to be grand. In fact, it shouldn't sound like a lesson. It just needs to be an expression of presence, noticing something beginning to bloom, however slowly, and letting her know you see it. No analysis, no pep talk, just honesty in the right moment, spoken lightly enough that she doesn't feel exposed. There are women who walk through life carrying a quiet sense of not being enough, not pretty enough, not good enough, not soft enough, not strong enough. And you won't always know that one true sentence, just one, might help them start to admit, maybe I am enough, in a way I never let myself believe before. Women don't need someone to promise to change their lives, but they always remember someone who helped them see clearly the person they're already becoming and feel more certain in walking that path. A true compliment in this case isn't an ending, it's a beginning. You've made it to the very end of this journey, and if there's one thing worth keeping, it's probably not the secret to saying the right words, but the quiet realization that when you truly see someone, you don't need to say much. A meaningful compliment doesn't begin with language. It begins with observation, with an unhurried gaze, with a kind of attention that carries no judgment. From there, you begin to notice the small things others miss, and only when you've truly felt it does it become something worth saying. Women aren't lacking kind words, but there are parts of them, sometimes contradictory, sometimes fragile, that they never speak aloud. They live with those parts every day, quietly, with no hope that anyone will notice. But if someone truly sees, and does so without making her feel exposed, then that one sentence can reach somewhere deep. The right kind of compliment doesn't try to change someone. It affirms something that already exists, something alive, present, but never named. And sometimes that recognition alone makes someone want to live better, not to return the gesture, but because they now see something within themselves that's worth protecting. If you've ever used easy, familiar compliments, don't blame yourself. That's where we all begin. But maybe from today on, you'll choose to look a little more closely, listen a little more deeply, not for the effect, but because you genuinely want to connect, to be present. You don't need polished lines. You only need to let go of the urge to impress. And instead, ask yourself, right now, am I seeing something real, something she's never heard anyone say before? When you see it, you'll know what to say and how little you need to say. A true compliment doesn't leave behind applause, but it can leave behind a kind of echo, quiet, deep, and long-lasting. If what you've just heard makes you look at others or yourself with a gentler gaze, then stay. There is still much more for us to see, together, bit by bit. No rush, but fully present.